To the Wednesday, May 15th, 2024 electronic meeting of the Ann Arbor Transportation Commission. This meeting is being held electronically, but we intend to conduct it similarly to an in-person meeting. Public comment will be via telephone or Zoom only. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, please call 206-337-9723 and enter meeting ID number 934-6385-2907 or join via the Zoom link. This information is also available on the published agenda in the public notices section of the city website and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN channel 16. Chris, if you could call roll.
No problem. I'll now call roll. I've received regrets from Commissioner Briggs and Margolis, who will unfortunately not be able to attend. Please say here and from where you're dialing when your name is called. Commissioner Bolden. Okay. Commissioner Broven.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Campbell.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Automaki.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Hook.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Keeler.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Lee.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Here from Superior Township.
Commissioner Ramaswamy.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Hess.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Hutchinson.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Lieutenant Mike Sherba. Okay. All right, with that, we do have quorum.
All right, thank you. There are two items on the consent agenda, approval of the agenda and approval of the minutes. I'd like to note, though, that we received late word that Dr. Jim Sayer is unable to join us this evening to provide an update on the U of M Transportation Research Institute. So that presentation will be delayed to a date yet to be determined. Beyond that change, are there any other modifications to the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Moved by Megan, seconded by Pravina. All those in favor of the motion, please say yes or raise your hand. All those opposed, please say no or raise your hand. All right, the consent agenda is approved. Now on to public comment. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes. Again, please call 206-337-9723 and enter meeting ID number 934-6385-2907 or connect via Zoom as described on the agenda. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number or the person's Zoom ID. In order to electronically raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone or select the raise hand button in Zoom. You'll hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds so that we can hear you clearly. Chris, do we have any members of the public who wish to speak?
Not at this time.
All right. Thank you, by the way, to those who forwarded emails to our attention. There are 3 emails, including attachments in the packet, so I encourage everyone, of course, as always, to go take a look at those. So first up in business, SPIN operational agreement. SPIN's agreement, which allows them to operate their e-scooters and e-bikes on city streets, is up for renewal. So Raymond will walk us through the agreement and then answer any questions. We also have Jimmy Gilman here from SPIN who can help answer questions. Raymond.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll go ahead and kind of introduce the item and then kind of turn it over to the commission for questions. So first, what I want to do is just kind of share my screen. I think this will just wanted to kind of walk through the resolution that's in your packet, which really kind of shows the majority of, what it is we're seeking your recommendation on. So, SPIN has been operating e-scooters in the community since 2019. And then last year, just about a year ago, they introduced e-bikes as well. The number initially started off at 200 e-scooters, and then that's been kind of increased incrementally over time. Currently, there are 450 e-scooters operating and 100 e-bikes, and I should say up to 450 e-scooters and 100 e-bikes. And what's kind of interesting about this is while the city kind of sets the cap, the sort of fee that's paid is split between the city and the university. So just over half the vehicles are licensed by the city of Ann Arbor. In other words, what we get a fee for, and the other half are kind of licensed by the University of Michigan. This is just a sort of understanding that many of these vehicles end up on campus and vice versa. Those that are deployed on campus end up downtown. So it was sort of a mutual agreement that was reached between the university and the city in terms of how to handle this. So this would be a continuation or a request for a continuation of those services for a 6th year with the possibility to extend for 2 additional years. Right now, we do not anticipate an augmentation of the number of vehicles. And, you know, part of that is we always just try to find kind of this balance of the number of vehicles that are out there so that they can be found by people who are seeking them. But at the same time, there aren't so many that it's creating clutter or nuisance. I know sometimes some users of the vehicles still don't park them appropriately, but Spin has taken some measures to address that, which we can talk about in a little bit more detail. So, you know, really getting to the resolved clauses that, you know, the operating license agreement be extended to Spin, and that, you know, the mayor and the clerk and city attorney allow execution of the contract. And then, like I said, that it would be authorized for an additional year with the possibility to extend for 2 additional years, and that can be done administratively. And so that's pretty much what I wanted to introduce the item as. There is the full-blown right-of-way use license agreement included in the packet. In there, you'll see some of the terms of that. It kind of talks about how many vehicles. It talks about insurance and indemnification. It talks about, you know, proper parking. It talks about data sharing. It talks about, you know, just a lot of these different things that are kind of baked into the agreement itself. All of this has largely remained unchanged. And so it's, you know, really just an extending the existing contract with Spin. And then another thing that we put in, there was some information that was shared about some of the Spin safety initiatives that are currently up and running, but then we also have Jimmy here to talk about some other things that they're working on as well. So, you know, there are some things that are built into the app itself that really encourage riders to, you know, ride safely and appropriately, and also park the vehicle in such a way appropriately so as not to be an obstruction. There are some geo-fenced zones where the scooters cannot operate. For example, per the university's request, the diag, a scooter or a bike ostensibly shuts down. I think it'll go like 1 mile per hour or something, but it largely becomes ineffective. We've also, if you aren't aware, we've geo-fenced downtown and put a speed limiter on it of 10 miles per hour, so that any scooter can't go above 10 miles per hour downtown. So, and we've worked with Spin to establish all of that. I will say also, you know, we didn't include a lot of these things have stacked up over time, but there's, you know, if you go back through some of the resolutions that are listed in this newest resolution, you'll see how we've stacked on some other things. So, for example, Spin worked with us on some equity considerations. So allowing people who are unbanked to check out scooters, and then also offering discounts to people who are in public housing. So that's all baked in there as well. And then Spin has also partnered with the city for allowing Spin scooters to be used for city employees to do, you know, business travel and things like that to help reduce the city's carbon footprint as a form of electric mobility. So these are just some of the things that have kind of happened over the years that would be a continuation of those types of services They're not all necessarily enumerated in this agreement. Well, they're enumerated in the license agreement, but the actual resolutions that approved all that, you can go back. They're all referenced in the resolution itself. So, for example, it's this whereas clause where it talks about all the different resolutions that have been passed over the last 4 years related to spin. So those were kind of the highlights I wanted to share. And then maybe what I'll do, if I may, turn it over to Jimmy to, see if he wants to share anything additional as well, to piggyback off of that. And then we can answer any questions you may have. I know Pete sent some questions along. So we are prepared to go through those. If that's how you want to handle it, there are a couple of different ways of, but I'll leave it to the commission in terms of how we want to entertain those questions.
First, let's get Jimmy. If you wanted to add or say anything, and we can, I think you had a chance to look through Peter's questions. Actually, I'll let Jimmy speak if you have anything, and then maybe we'll take some other questions, and then we'll dive into Pete's questions, if that's all right.
Sure, that sounds good on my end, and good to see everyone. So my name is Jimmy Gilman. I manage partnerships for SPIN, including the Ann Arbor program for the last several years. I think I had the chance to speak to the commission about a year ago related to some of the equity programming that we were bringing to the program that I know Raymond just mentioned. So really, I think, in terms of some of the novel and unique programming we brought to Ann Arbor, I think Raymond touched on a lot of it. All I can say is we've really appreciated the city's partnership over the last several years, building the program with these different initiatives, to Raymond's point, that we've been able to stack on top of each other, and really make this a developed and built out partnership. So I know there are some questions that were sent over ahead of time. I think this is easier just to dive into the questions and have a back and forth and really make this conversational. So happy to leave it at that, and answer any questions, either those that were sent in advance or any other questions that the commission might have.
Well, let's see if before we get into the ones that were sent, does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask now? Into Peter's questions. We'll have time throughout, obviously, too, and afterwards. Okay, so let's, dive what Peter had sent. You guys, sorry, Pravina. Why don't you go ahead?
That's okay. I'm sorry. I just wanted to just verify, are we expanding any of the sites for the spin, for the bike site? Do we get bike racks? Is that going to just be downtown? Or I didn't see in the contract, maybe I missed it, if there's going to be expanded to other parts of the city.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, both the spin scooters and the spin bikes are dockless systems, right? So, there's both a beauty and sort of a pain point with that, right? So the fact that they're dockless means, a user can pick them up or check them out and leave them without necessarily checking them into a sort of rack or station. That applies to bicycles as well. There are fewer bicycles in the community. There are, one for every 4 scooters roughly. So, finding a bicycle, there just aren't quite as many of them. In terms of where they're able to operate, and Jimmy can correct me if I'm wrong, it is in the entirety of Ann Arbor. So what I suspect happens, especially with bicycles, is, there tends to, be some concentrations around campus and downtown where you might find them. We do find that, if there are bicycle racks nearby, hopefully users are putting them near those bicycle racks. The bikes don't themselves need to be locked to a bike rack. They actually have a self-locking mechanism, right? But you can lock them to a bike if you want to continue to keep it checked out, right, under your name, and continue to kind of pay the meter on the bike. So in terms of like bike parking itself, you're touching on another initiative that we're working on. We have an intern right now on our team that's going through and taking an inventory of all parking on private property outside of downtown. So the distinction here is that most of the bike parking you see downtown is in the public right-of-way. So it's publicly owned. It's largely put there by the DDA or as part of a capital project. Whereas most of the parking outside of downtown tends to be like in parking lots or adjacent to businesses, and that tends to be outside of the public right-of-way on private property. So we're trying to get at least an understanding of what that parking infrastructure looks like. And the reason why I bring this up, and it's kind of an interesting distinction, we as a city can't force someone to park on private property, right? And so since we don't have public bike racks outside of the downtown area, it starts to get into a weird space about, forcing people to end their ride, at a bike rack, for example, if there is no bike rack in the public right of way. So that is something that's one of the reasons why we're doing this inventory, just to understand kind of where there are bike facilities and bike racks. And maybe that may inform a shift or a change in terms of how we expect users to end their ride. But right now, we're just kind of, and Jimmy can speak to this. Users are expected to take a picture of when they end their ride, how they left the vehicle, whether it be a scooter or a bike. And if there are complaints about that person, or as Spin reviews that information, if someone is notoriously parking their bike or scooter incorrectly as a user, they can get their privileges of using the system revoked. So in other words, if they're blocking crosswalks, if they're tipped over, if there are places they shouldn't be, repeat offenders can kind of go to the doghouse. So that's one of the things that Jimmy and his team have kind of implemented as part of the rollout to make sure that we try to stay on top of it. I'm going to admit it doesn't always, there's still some people who park incorrectly and some that still fall through the cracks. We do have an A2 Fix-It ticket as well, so that if a bike or scooter is parked incorrectly, someone can, with their phone or on the app, record that, and then that gets reported to both the city as well as Spin to rectify the situation. So I probably went a little deeper than you needed, but I just wanted to say that we continue to think about parking, and we want to make sure that users are doing what they're expected to do, and that we're trying to make sure that the public rights of way are still accessible and being used in the ways that we hope them to be used.
The only thing I might add, if I may jump into, I think Raymond outlined that very well. Two other tools that we've employed here are preferred and incentivized parking points that are outlined in the app. So we'll actually incentivize folks to park in specified locations that are indicated in the Spin app. They can that folks can see this is an incentivized parking point, to make sure that we're incentivized that proper parking in specific locations. So if a user does park in the spot as signified in the app, they'll receive a 25% discount off their next trip. So that's one thing that we have in place. Another thing is, so Raymond mentions folks need to take a picture of where they park their bike or scooter after completing a trip. We're actually integrating AI surveillance into all of those pictures as well. It used to be more of a manual process, but we're able to use AI now to determine, is this a proper parking location, or is this a location that's obstructing the public right of way, to then issue either reminders, warnings, or fines, or ultimately, if we see someone who continues to be non-compliant, bans from the system. So again, echoing a lot of what Raymond mentioned, but just adding a little bit of color to that from our side too.
Yeah, wanted to clarify my question a little bit deeper. I guess my thought was, I understand that you can pick up in wherever you find a Spin, you can grab and go. Is there locations where they are housed the next morning where they're all charged up? Is that only in downtown on campus areas?
So we have a deployment map throughout the extent of the city. I would say the areas where we see the highest amount of use are around downtown and campus as two hubs of activity that are within that last 1 to 2 mile connection radius. Especially since we've introduced bikes, we have seen more trips to exterior parts of town as well, being a seated mode, being a mode that has cargo capacity. So with the bikes in particular, we've attempted to range our deployments outside of just those two hubs of downtown and the university.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yeah, excuse me. I'll note, I'm really glad to hear the comments from both Raymond and from Spin about measures being taken, given that I think on the March 20th meeting, we had a public comment in the email where somebody, a citizen was complaining about, I think, parking behavior. So to hear that there's some solutions there is great. I think my question was a context question for Raymond. I noticed that this was a non-exclusive license, and I think in the February meeting, we had an inquiry from another vendor. And so I'm just looking for general context about how does the city currently respond to inquiries from other scooter vendors?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have been in this relationship with Spin, to go way back, right? Spin was not the first vendor in town. A different vendor, Bird, was actually the first that came in September, I think, of 2018. And so what that kind of prompted was the very first form of the right-of-way use agreement that you see in your packet. What we pretty much did is we scrambled to kind of put some parameters around their operation. So after 6 months, after that first term of that agreement went through, we found that vendor at that time was not really fulfilling kind of the terms of the agreement. And so we discontinued our relationship with Bird at that time. Then we had kind of looked to other vendors because there was some interest in the community by the service provided by the scooters. This was pre-pandemic, obviously, so there were a lot more vendors in the space if you followed it. There's Bird, there's Lime, there's Spin, there was Gotcha, there were, Jimmy could probably rattle them all off. So we started to engage with other vendors to see who could deliver a service acceptably to the city, and Spin kind of came forward, and so we entered into a contract with them. So then we have been courted by other vendors since then, and pretty much what we've said is, what more can you bring to the market that isn't more of the same, right? We already have an existing agreement with Spin at the time. And so the question is, what more can you offer, either in terms of mobility options? So for example, is there something like a moped, like that type of scooter? Or are there other incentives, other things? And we haven't really, some companies say they can match, but they haven't really offered anything beyond what we're already getting with Spin. And so as such, we've just said, well, until you can show something different, you're welcome to come and bring something to us and we'll route it through, but it may not, staff may not recommend approval of it. And so that's how things have been handled to date.
Sure. Great. Thank you.
All right, let's dive into Pete's questions. Do one of you all have those up to there? You can kind of, Peter, maybe you want to guide us through your questions here, and let Raymond and or Jimmy reply as we go through.
Sure. Thanks for joining to talk this over with us, Jimmy. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So the first, I organized the questions in a few sections, and the first one is about tracking and preventing scooter crashes. And the background there is that we had 2 serious scooter crashes in 2023 that were sort of shockingly similar, with riders hitting the front left fender of cars and then getting head injuries from contact with the windshield. And so I was left at the time wondering, like, is this a common kind of crash? Because to get 2 of them in quick succession like that was somewhat shocking. So as I say here, I reached out to Spin and didn't get any response. Maybe I'm not sending those notes to the right people or what, I don't know. So the questions that I have then around this are, how do you track crashes involving riders? That's the first one. And, related to that, can you see how common this type of crash is, where people end up with head injuries after impacting the windshield of oncoming traffic.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. And to answer your first question here, so if in the future, if you want to direct all inquiries my way, and I can leave you with my email address to make sure that those are responded to in a timely fashion, absolutely, we'll make sure all inquiries are responded to in the future. So in terms of tracking crashes for riders, so there are a few different modes. One is reports through our customer support team. So having a report to our customer service, either calling in or emailing. Those reports are then documented. We make sure we capture the vehicle in question and do our due diligence from there on exactly what all the details were surrounding the reported incident. I know in the past there have also been incidents reported to the city that may not be reported to our team, but then we work closely together on, again, gathering those details, the scooter in question, the rider in question, to make sure we're carrying out a full investigation process at that time. I think, one thing on this point, in terms of how common is the type of crash, how common are incidents on scooters in general, we do see incidents on shared micromobility devices as underreported, similar as to how they are underreported on bicycles or in pedestrian accidents as well. We're currently working with a company called Flare to integrate and pilot crash detection technology into our offerings as well. This actually started as a pilot program and research program at the University of Michigan as part of their MCity program in collaboration with College of Engineering and Innovation Center. A few students have been helping us using spin scooters develop both incident detection and rider safety scores that can be determined through gyroscope readings, tilt and sway of different, risky riding behavior or behavior that would indicate an incident has occurred on a scooter. So that's something we're really excited about to pilot moving forward. I think that research will be able both to detect more incidents as they occur out there and to determine rider behavior leading up to those incidents, so that we can, create the safest service possible. So those are my initial thoughts, but happy to go down any of those threads even further.
Okay, those sound like good initiatives. Like how long before we should expect to see some improvement and some relevant outcome from them? The timeline.
Sure. Again, it's something that currently research is being done. I know that the students with whom we were working at the university were hoping to categorize some of this research moving into the summertime. They actually just presented some of it to us. But yeah, can you clarify a bit more on the improvement or the exactly what the sort of outcome?
Sure.
On that side too, just so I can.
Yeah. I mean, by way of comparison, my tally for last year shows 4 serious bicycle crashes in Ann Arbor and no fatalities. And that's all the bike riders on all the bikes in Ann Arbor. The fleet of spin scooters, we saw 2 serious crashes and one of them was fatal. So when we're looking at these 450 scooters that we have in Ann Arbor, we had half as many incidents as all of the bicycles and all the riders and all the miles traveled in Ann Arbor. To me, that is that's not a good track record, and I want to see some real tangible improvements towards curtailing those injuries and the fatality that we had in 2023. What is the plan to get there? So that's what I mean when I say when are we likely to see some improvements from that technology? or from some of the other technologies that I've brought forth in the questions that I asked.
Sure. So I think we can plan to see more integration with that Flare program into our app moving forward into this calendar year. We're actually looking to put another research project on MSU's campus forward as well. And I think this data, just to put it in perspective, what exactly we can use it for is a dashboard to see where we are seeing either incidents or, risky riding behavior, and risky either being from the user side of things or due to physical infrastructure in a specific spot. And then on our end, we can use that for other interventions, such as geofencing an area as a slower area, potentially making no ride zones. I think one advantage that we do have as a shared system is we are able to geofence in specific spots to control where scooters and bikes can go, where they can't go, and at what speed they're going in those areas. So again, I think it's something that is a continuous improvement for us and a continuous initiative to address safety for us. And this data will allow us to build upon some of the things that we've already done. For example, as Raymond mentions, having the downtown area as a slow zone, having the diag as a no ride zone, and potentially incorporating that in other parts of the city as well.
Pravina, you got a question?
Yeah, Peter, thanks for this document. This second last bullet that you have on here, that kind of intrigued me. Raymond, do we not have information on our city page about the scooter program and the safety requirements and some of the things that Jimmy has already identified, and yourself, about these incentives, or where they should park, or what is the protocol? I'm not sure like what all entails, but it may be good to benchmark these other cities and have something on our own page.
Yeah, we can do that. I think we've worked with Spin to actually on some of the
I lost Raymond. Anybody else listen? Can you say that again, Raymond? I lost you.
Yeah, sorry. Am I back?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, my internet is choppy. I don't know why. We've worked with Jimmy and the Spin team over the years on some of the safety messaging that's in the app. So we were kind of relying on the users of the scooters to, access that information through the app, because, so for example, if you've ever used a Spin, you actually have to kind of go through like a little tutorial on safety. You have to agree to terms and conditions and all those things. So there's several things you have to do in order to kind of demonstrate, your understanding of the safety protocols. But we can also put information on our website. This is the first time that request has been made of us, so we can do that. That's not a problem.
So
Again,
Raymond, to clarify though, the links I have here are Spin web pages that are devoted to the operations in a particular city. They are not city-run web pages.
And I can clarify.
Right, but I think Pravina's question was about whether the city could put it on, unless I misunderstood. So was that?
That's just information somewhere.
Sure.
I mean, maybe Jimmy can speak to how they've done it in other cities, but maybe it's something that's a joint effort, right? Like,
and that's exactly right. I think more recently we've seen cities desiring to put information on their websites just because it's already an established site and location that folks may be viewing who are residents of the area. It's something we could do on our end. We'd be happy to provide the data or information to the city to put up on y'all's end of things as well. So yeah, again, something that we can certainly work together on to make happen.
Okay.
Thank you. Do you want to move on?
Well, there's a couple other points in this paragraph that I guess I'd like to talk about. Is geofencing something that could be applied to streets that we know are in poor condition?
It certainly can be. Obviously that's something we'd want to work closely with the city on. I think geofencing is extremely effective in the right circumstances. For example, slowing scooters and e-bikes in a high pedestrian location to keep safe intermixing of shared devices and pedestrians. I think on-street scenarios, there can be challenges with slowing down a device or stopping a device that's riding with the flow of traffic. So, personally as a cyclist, I know I feel safest when I'm able to ride with the flow of traffic, on a roadway. But again, it's something that we could chat about if there are specific or unique circumstances where we think it would be better to slow down a scooter or bike or stop a scooter or bike from riding in that location. Again, I think there are just, a multitude of different factors to consider when making that decision too.
Okay. This question stems from the fact that Ann Arbor and really the entire state of Michigan has a lot of pavement that's in poor condition. I don't know if you're from Michigan or if you have spent a lot of time here, but that's the reality of pavement here with our funding situation and our freeze and thaw cycle. We just have a lot of pavement in bad shape, and this is a thing that I think this is a place where Spin could improve its safety for riders, is protecting them from areas that are not able to be traversed on a vehicle with very small wheels, like a scooter.
Yeah, I would just throw a little caution to that for a couple of reasons. I mean, as Jimmy just mentioned, there's, as I mentioned, when you hit the diag, the vehicle almost comes to a stop. So, what I think one of the concerns would be is if we create a patchwork of where the scooter can and can't be operated, so that users will find it very difficult to actually use the vehicle for the trip purpose that they intended. And then, as a reminder, while it's not outright encouraged, but, as a reminder for some of the work this commission did on the micromobility ordinance, or what we call the personal mobility vehicle ordinance, these vehicles are allowed to be ridden on the sidewalk. So if, again, if it's done so in a safe fashion and is respectful to pedestrians, and that's all written into the ordinance. But, the idea is, if we limit where people can go due to the condition of the roadway, then we limit kind of this as a form of mobility. And I appreciate the point. Today was Bike to Everywhere Day. Hopefully people got on their bikes today. I traversed a road that was not particularly comfortable. It was pothole ridden, but I still rode my bike on it. And I would have been dismayed if I wouldn't be allowed to ride my bike on that facility just because it's potholed. So I just think there's a trade-off here that we have to kind of keep in mind about, mode shift, getting people into sustainable forms of transportation, but then, limiting their ability to use these forms of transportation.
Okay. Point taken, Raymond. I feel compelled to point out though that a bicycle with 26-inch wheels is better able to manage rough pavement than a scooter with 6 or 8-inch wheels or however big it is on a spin scooter, right? I mean, that's physics. The other point on here that I wanted to point out, Jimmy, was the safe start feature that Bird has used. Has that proven effective? Is it something that we can use here in Ann Arbor?
We could certainly put it in place. We find it, most useful during later night hours, from potentially like a 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. or something like that. We have some data to show its effectiveness. But yeah, something we certainly could put in place here as well. It is a feature that's available to us.
Okay. I think it's worth trying.
Sure. Yeah.
All right.
Real quick, briefly, give me how does that work in practice? I haven't seen one with that feature before.
Yeah. So it would be the flow of when a user is starting a trip, they would receive all of the program rules and safety screens, as we call them, before they're actually able to access a device. This would be a final screen where there would be a message that says, some wording to the effect of, do not use a spin scooter if you are under the influence. And then there would either be a prompt to type in a specific phrase or test a user's reaction speed, both of which testing, first of all, just giving that final message an alert of, do not use this as a transportation mode if you are inebriated. And second of all, having a user prompt and sort of a test to make sure that they are capable of using the device, which would actually bar them from using a scooter if they're not able to follow that prompt. So again, something we think is most useful targeted in some of those hours where there might be that risk or temptation of folks to use a device while inebriated, to really, add an extra level of protection against that.
Okay, so no added hardware. It's more software on the app. Okay, no breathalyzer on the handlebars or anything.
Correct. Yeah, it's a product offering in the app. We recognize it's not one singular silver bullet, right, to restrict users from riding while inebriated. It's education at in-person events. It's those safety screens and rules that folks see before every trip. And then this isn't just another added product that we can put on in the app as that final screen that someone is viewing, and to make sure that they're doing that short test.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
You want to move on to the next section of questions?
Yeah,
Is that right, Peter? I think
Yeah.
the next section is around helmet usage.
Yeah. So helmets are really put forth as, at least in the SPIN's online information, put forth as an important safety feature, and there's a lot dedicated to them in safety instruction that's been presents to renters. I got here text of a press release that Spin signed on to that said that helmet use should be encouraged. I guess from my perspective, it really looks like the user experience that Spin is trying to create for its scooter users does not jibe well with helmet usage. So like if I ride my bike somewhere, I can leave my helmet strapped to my bike. I got a place for it. I don't have to take it in the pub with me, or I don't have to, I don't have to carry it around. We've also got videos that Spin has posted that shows people like giving up on waiting for a bus and instead opting to take a Spin scooter. And where do they find a helmet under those circumstances? Like there's no chance of them having a helmet under those circumstances. I will point out that in the video that I'm talking about, this renter finds a helmet draped across the handlebars of the scooter that he notices. And that's a really unrealistic representation of what it's like to use a helmet with a Spin scooter, and I think unhelpful. So Spin is advertising the idea, in this press release, that we should be encouraging helmet usage, though it shouldn't be mandatory. And I guess I'm wondering if this is an important part of Spin's safety protocol. Like, what is Spin doing to encourage people to use helmets? And also, I'll point out, it's not working very well. One of the studies that's cited in that press release as measured helmet usage among scooter riders at like 5% compared to 50% for bike riders. I went downtown and watched scooter riders at the corner of North U and State Street for an hour, and I saw 1 out of 13 scooter riders wearing a helmet. That's 7%. So that jives with the 5% in the study. So if this is going to be an important part of Spin's safety message for scooter riders, like, we need to be doing more to encourage the use. And I'm going to come right out and say, I think that encouragement role and that responsibility needs to go to Spin, because they are the company that's trying to make money off of renting scooters. Like, this is not a thing that can be left to advocate groups or to the city. So what are we doing, and when are we going to get better about this encouragement? Because, I mean, that's what these questions are about. And then I also do want to point out, and I included pictures in the document, that, like, when we look at helmets on Spin's website, there's broken links everywhere. Like, it's this is a place where we need improvement. So
Yeah, I'll dive in and try to touch on all of those different points, Peter. So first and foremost, we, at our in-person events that we host in Ann Arbor or at the university, hand out free helmets to folks that visit the Spin table, visit the Spin tent. I can't tell you the exact number that we've given away over the last 5 years, but it's in the hundreds, if not thousands, of helmets that we've been able to give away and distribute to folks who are either Spin users or prospective Spin users. So something we've done in the past, something we'll continue to do, so that folks who are interested in Spin have that helmet available to them as we're discussing with them the service, how to use it safely, and what the program rules and regulations look like. So that's one thing. I know your point on, coming up to a scooter if, for example, you missed the bus, or, you took a separate mode to arrive at a destination, but you're using a scooter to return, for example. We do, and we get that question at events. We refer folks to a company with whom we have a referral partnership called Overaid that sells fold-up helmets. So that's an option for example, if you are a regular or semi-regular micromobility user, you can have a helmet that folds up and is stored in your backpack. So if you do come upon a scooter in sort of more of a spur of the moment usage scenario, you have a helmet that's more easily stored in a backpack, in luggage, that you can then wear and use as part of your trip. So that's another company that we refer to for, that as an option, and just bring awareness to that. We have, to your point, and I think is shown in some of these videos, experimented in the past with leaving helmets on scooter and bike handlebars for repeat use by riders. We've run into challenges there just with, vandalism of the helmets if they aren't strapped to anything, as well as just, I think sanitary concerns of sharing helmets out there and really not having a feasible way to sanitize between use. So again, something we certainly have experimented with, but I think some of those challenges of vandalism and sanitation really make that challenging. Again, those are some of the physical interventions of encouraging helmet use. Again, in our app, we can always add an extra in-app message saying, please wear a helmet before each trip as part of the program rules and regulations. And one thing that actually is in the pipeline that I believe could offer as an option later this year is in the end of ride screen. If a user takes a selfie and they're wearing a helmet in that selfie, we can AI verify that picture to then give a 25% discount off their next trip. So again, another incentive for if you're to use a helmet, and if you're wearing that helmet, to take a picture and then offer a financial incentive for a future trip. So, we try to do it on the in-app product side of things with reminders, in-person giveaways and referrals, and then also a financial incentive for it as a post-trip measure. I flagged, I know you mentioned the link on the website. I flagged that to our engineering team to make sure that's back up and running. That's, an engineering bug on our side of things, but something we'll make sure is reconciled. But again, those would be the three main camps of things that I'd say we're doing on our side to encourage it.
Can you say the name of that folding helmet company once more?
It's called Overaid.
Okay.
And I can send you a link to it.
That would be great.
Great. Sure.
That is the kind of thing that I'd like to see featured prominently, or that I would expect to see when I follow that helmet link on your website.
Lisa.
Yeah, or just a comment, maybe not entirely relevant to the work of the commission, but as somebody whose whole family has head circumferences that are in like the 99.9 percentile, almost always if there's a giveaway or a shared helmet, never fits any of us. So this is just a personal plug for considering, inclusivity of people with very large head circumference.
Totally. And something we do try to have a range. So we have small, medium, and large helmets with like foam padding inserts that are certified to, fit at those in between sizes as well. But it's a good call out, to maybe even expand to extra small or extra large and have other options available too.
All right, let's move on to the last section here of your questions, which are around speed, I believe, speed limits. Peter, do you want to introduce this?
Sure. So there's a study that's cited here, and the study measured the speed of bike riders and the speed of e-scooter riders. And I guess I'm really what I'm trying to do is get to the bottom of where is this 15 mile per hour recommendation that is in the press release that's been presented. Like, what backs that up? Because the Arellano and Fang study that was linked in the press release doesn't back that up. And it even shows that 15 miles per hour would be faster than most of the bikes that were measured in this study. So I understand how faster might be better for a user's perceived experience, but I don't see any data backing up that faster speed limits are safer. And I guess it felt disingenuous for it to be presented that way, and for the data in that study to be presented that way, or the conclusions of that study to be presented that way. So
sure. So just to jump in, and I know this study uses bicycles, right, as sort of a reference point. And I know, there's more research out there right now on bikes compared to e-scooters, right? So I think a lot of what we've gleaned in terms of inferences has been studying bikes as a mode to then glean that to other micromobility modes such as scooters as well. I will say, I think the research that we're doing with the company Flare, as I mentioned, both at and MSU, to determine safe riding conditions and safe riding scores under different environments and under different speeds, can really go a long way to show us, is there really a higher rate of incidence if someone is going 15 versus, let's say, 12 miles per hour. I don't think there are a ton of studies out there yet that are really looking at tilt, sway, and incident data with speed limits to really come to an inference. Obviously, there are more on bicycles just because it's an older mode. And e-scooters really have only come on the scene in the last 6 years, more or less. So something through that research, I think we'll be able to get some better data and then really, consider that recommendation and ultimate speed limit of the vehicles. Well, one thing I will point out too is there are already out there a ton of different personal e-mobility devices that go far beyond 20 or 15 miles per hour, whether it's scooters, e-bikes, one wheels. So I think a real benefit of our mode is that it is speed governed at that 15 miles per hour and can be governed less, again, in certain circumstances, such as in downtown Ann Arbor. So those are a couple of thoughts. And then I guess the last point is just, balancing that, being able to access a destination for an individual who may need to access work and it's 4 miles across town, having the speed to get them there efficiently and have that access to place of work, place of school, etc., as a consideration in this as well. So again, as the industry progresses and matures and as we conduct more research, I think more data to back that up specifically on the e-scooter side of things. But those are just my, initial thoughts of thinking about speed limits, speed governors, what we're able to offer as a shared mode, and where I think we can take it moving forward.
Thank you.
Can I make one last comment on what you said? If that's okay, Jimmy.
Sure. Yeah.
E-scooters are new, yes, and we have a lot of infrastructure in place for reporting bike crashes and recording bike crashes, and like our standardized forms, like the UD10 crash report, allows us to easily sort all of the bike crashes that happen in the city or in the state. Right. I have access to that information, and so does everyone on the internet. I don't have easy access to a list of all the scooter crashes that happened in the state, and that's part of why I'm demanding that from Spin. Like, you guys are in a unique position to have access to that data, and in my mind, you have a responsibility to share it, because you are leading us into this, this new space with scooters and this new technology that's like you said, is only 6 years old. And so you have a responsibility to fill in the gaps where the rest of the infrastructure hasn't caught up with this new technology. And so I hope that I hope the Spin will take that responsibility seriously. When I talk about seeing data, like I would like to see more than just the crashes that happened in Ann Arbor. I'd like to see like what are the crashes that have happened statewide with Spin scooters? What is the incident of crashes in similar cities like Kalamazoo or East Lansing or wherever? What is the comparison between crashes that get reported on Spin bikes versus Spin scooters? You have a very good comparison there. And so just to say, as you did in the note that you sent, that that we've had this many Spin rides and only this many Spin crashes just isn't enough. Like, we need to be able to compare that to the other modes that we have, like walking and biking, and unfortunately we don't have that right now. So in order for me to feel comfortable saying that the city should continue this partnership with Spin, I really want to see more of that data, and I really want you guys to step up and own that responsibility for keeping your users safe and our residents safe. So thank you for your time tonight. And I want to say, in general, I'm in favor of these like micro mobility solutions. I'm glad that we have them, and I'm eager to find a way for Spin to keep providing them, but it needs to be in a way that keeps everyone safe. So, or as safe as possible, at least. So thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you for the questions. And I guess just, we really want to embrace that role and that part in the micromobility sector and moving what safety looks like in the sector forward, right? So, and that's something, the research that I've mentioned that we're doing at MSU, at and at various other institutions across the country is something that I think is fairly unique to us as well. Being able to engage in research projects and be that partner to a community to move forward the thought on this, to improve what safety measures look like, what safety interventions look like. And to your point, Peter, get that data at a more granular level, not just the reported data, but then also data that we're gleaning from other sensors in our vehicles that even, I would say go beyond personal bike ped reports, where you're often not getting those near misses. You're not getting the, smaller scale incidents, but something that I think we can really tap into moving forward, both on the micromobility side of things, but planning for bike and ped infrastructure and different interventions in cities. So something we really do want to, be an active partner with, both here and throughout the country, and happy to keep sharing on those efforts as we move forward with them. But thank you for the questions and for giving me the opportunity to be here and speak today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for coming, Jimmy, and thanks for all the questions and the research, Peter. At this time, if there are no more questions, is there a motion to recommend approval of the renewal of Spin's operational agreement, which would allow them to continue operating their e-bike and e-scooters in Ann Arbor?
So moved.
Moved by Matt, seconded by Wanwu. All those in favor of the motion, please say yes or raise your hands. Okay, all those opposed to the motion, please say no or raise your hand. All right, the motion passes. Thanks again, Jimmy, for coming by.
Do we have time for one more quick question for Jimmy?
Yeah, I mean, we've already voted, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, I guess, to what extent does Spin consider seniors? I'm thinking it's like a demographic or a customer segment, or I was thinking, I'm like, if it's a senior in Ann Arbor, wouldn't it be great if we could provide micromobility? But I don't know about, certain ages or stages of life, if it's even possible to use like a scooter or bike. Like, I don't know. Did Jimmy might be frozen.
Yeah,
We're gone.
that might be the case.
Yeah.
Maybe
All right, I'll follow up offline.
We have his contact
Yeah.
information. We can send an email maybe after the meeting.
All right, thanks. Just curious.
All right.
So, Brett,
Oh, yes.
you caught me off guard with voting for that resolution. I'm sorry about that. I guess I wanted to, I guess I would like to propose that we recommend some measurable additions to the agreement. I mean, that's why I voted against. I wanted to have some discussion about it first, about the actual content of the resolution. I would like to vote in favor of it, and I'd like to say that, I think I could if we were to add some language like adding in safe start as a requirement, adding in data sharing as a requirement. I think these things need to be added into the agreement, and then I'm willing to vote in favor of it. So sorry for being slow on the response there to that resolution. Is there any opportunity for us to add that in? If not, I guess take that.
I think
take that back.
adding things in on the
my
general
feedback.
is kind of tricky. Doing amendments in general is
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
my feedback is like I'm generally supportive of, like I said, of micromobility, but I think those things need to be added into the.
So ours is a referral to city council, right?
I can
That they approve this. So I think there's the opportunity there. Erica isn't able to be with us tonight, but there's the opportunity that that's where the contract I think actually gets approved and executed.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that your opportunity may lie with talking to Erica and maybe she can be a champion of some change.
I'll do
bring
that.
it to council. When this,
sorry for going off agenda here, Brad, and thanks for the opportunity to explain my no vote, even though I'm generally in favor of micromobility solutions.
All right. Yeah, thanks. But especially in the interest of time, I want to try to keep moving here too. So up next is the Regional Transportation Authority update. We're joined this evening by Julie Roberts, who will give us an update on the activities and projects of the Regional Transportation Authority. So, Julia, the floor is yours. I think you have screen sharing. There we go. All right.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Julie Roberts. I'm the Planning and Innovation Director for RTA, or the Regional Transit Authority for Southeast Michigan. And I believe I have about 20 minutes, but I can shorten that if you want to move on to other items and leave some time for questions and answers at the end. Just a few updates. I'm not sure the last time that someone from RTA presented to this commission, so I'll try to give some highlights and overviews of what we're working on, how that applies to Ann Arbor, and happy to answer anything at the end or chime in if you have questions along the way. So for anyone who is familiar with RTA or maybe new, we have a pretty complex universe. So in addition to the city of Ann Arbor within Washtenaw County, we also work with Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, and have board representatives, 2 from each of our 4 counties for transit, as well as a chair from an appointment by the governor and an appointment as well by the city of Detroit's mayor. We work as sort of an umbrella organization for the existing transit agencies, including the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority, or the RIDE, DDOT in Detroit, SMART in the suburbs of Metro Detroit, and the People Mover downtown Detroit, elevated rail, as well as the Q line, which we are undergoing due diligence upon their request for us to acquire the light rail system along Woodward Avenue. We also work with other transportation providers, particularly shared transportation like Mogo Bike Share and other nonprofits and shared mobility operators, including e-scooters and others. We have an array of responsibilities, including funding, passing through all of the federal and state dollars to our direct recipient providers and others, planning for long-term transit in partnership with our providers, and accelerating some of these initiatives through pilots and other grant initiatives, as well as coordinating. So we're really here to serve in terms of support, both financially and technically, to work together, to think innovatively and be subject matter experts with our partners, as well as to manage all of the different forms of funding that come through our region at a regional level. So I'm not sure how many of you have been following this closely, but from a transit-specific perspective, we have seen a recent uptick in local bus operating funds last year with a one-time funding increase. That amount was then increased above the base level from the governor's proposal this year, but not quite at the same level that it was for this past year. And since then, the House and Senate committees have recommended closer to what's this past year's level, but not quite what the need is for the region, which you can see in purple on the far right. So we're talking on the order of tens of hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's something that is really badly needed in Southeast Michigan. As many of you may or may not know, we are the second lowest funded region for public transportation in the country for the 25 largest metropolitan areas, and we are the lowest of the top 15 large urbanized areas. And our region covers both the Ann Arbor urbanized area and the Detroit urbanized areas, as well as some of the rural and small urban communities in the surrounding areas. So this is both encouraging and shows a picture that there's still room for progress. We've been working with our state representatives on that account, and also working to, if you think of transit as inherently more equitable than other forms of transportation in general, there's still always room for focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion more intentionally. And so we're undergoing a program this year to be developed on how specifically that will be implemented, bringing together our business plan principles for equity with our regional transit master plan, goals, strategies, and actions. And so some of the things we're looking at are a DEI objectives workshop to bridge those two pieces of our organization together and kind of formulating the vision for the future of how do we incorporate DEI as an agency and specifically with community engagement through a roadmap. As well as some next steps and ideas, recognizing that we may not be experts in everything and we don't have all of the ideas. So we really want to get some input from our partners, both consulting with ADR as well as bringing that back to the public through some of our community engagement efforts and implementing this. So we've kicked it off this spring. We're just starting to go underway with that. And we're really excited for this initiative and threading that through all of the work that we do. For a geographical view of our region, I mentioned some of the providers that we work with. In addition to the ride, we also work with My Ride 2 through Ageways, legally known as the Area Agency on Aging 1B. And that provides a call center and an online portal for people to be able to do travel training, plan their trips across borders, because we know people work and live outside of red geographically penned lines on a map. And we want to make sure that we're going to continue to work towards making that easier to access as we move forward as a region. We work with over 80 communities and 30 nonprofit organizations, and we're what we call a small but mighty team of about 9 people. We do work with some consultants, but we primarily partner as our staff and team members directly as much as possible. So we cover all sorts of different modes, as I mentioned. So in addition to the micromobility we mentioned and kind of the fixed route buses and rail, we also work with demand response shuttles, so both on-demand and microtransit, paratransit, as well as carpooling and vanpooling. And you'll notice on this map, in case anybody caught it, there is an area in southeast Washtenaw where the gray is not quite as dark in terms of community transit provider service areas. That is because of a technical definition, while outside of the ride's urbanized area, WAVE, where I was the executive director for 3 years before coming to RTA, and People's Express, who we partnered with closely, they operate in kind of the small urban and rural areas of the county. People's Express service has a different fare model, and so it is based per mile rather than a fixed fare. And so depending on how you define public transit, that can sometimes fall outside of the scope. And it just means it speaks to the affordability of, if you're taking a short trip, then it's easy to do. If you're taking a longer trip, then sometimes it may be more challenging for folks, especially lower income individuals and families. So that's something that, one of the things we're working towards as a region is how do we align our fare policies? And I think that's a longer term conversation and aspiration. So that kind of leads into, what are we trying to do? Our goals from our most recent update of our regional transit master plan, including the need for funding to do any of these things, but with funding, improve, expand, innovate, and sustain public transit in the region. So improving existing services, expanding new transit, building off of the successes within Washtenaw County and the ride with your most recent millage and other local millages, innovating resilient projects and sustaining future programs. So you'll see here is a list of our top 10 investment priorities, and that was consolidated from 23 strategies that we had last year to make it a little bit more bite-sized, and we'll continue to refine that in the next year with hopefully grouping these into buckets like services, resources, both onboard and offboard transit, because we know everybody is a pedestrian, whether they take transit or not. We all use transit as a community to our benefit. And then also resources. So things like making sure our equipment is up to par as we replace it and improve it, and that our workforce development is one that can continue to thrive. Another thing that is not on here, but we go into more detail in the plans on our website if you'd like to check it out. We have about at least three actions per each of these investment priorities, looking at funding scenarios of what happens if we have no new funding, what happens if we have one-time funding, and what happens if we have sustainable funding. And so we'll continue to prioritize those as we move forward. A little bit about some of the pilots that we're working on. Some of you may be familiar with the Detroit to Ann Arbor Express, Nonstop Express in partnership with the ride. This was started a couple of years ago in earnest. Technically started a couple of days before the COVID-19 shutdown, and then we had to press pause for a little while, but have restarted it fairly successfully with about 7,000 trips a month now, and most recently over 1,000 trips for the NFL draft, where we had so much demand. A few events we've sold out of our 11 o'clock return trip to Ann Arbor. And we actually added an extra 2 midnight buses on that Thursday evening, and an extra 1 midnight bus on that Friday evening. We've also, based on that model, and these are grant funded pilots through the congestion mitigation and air quality, as well as carbon reduction programs. We started a Detroit Air Express, similar to Air Ride, from Detroit to DTW, and that's seen about 3,500 riders in the first month. Both services run about 16 round trips a day. The fares are $6 in advance if you book online, $8 at the door, with discounts for seniors, people with disabilities, students, and frequent travelers for 10 passes and 50 ride passes as low as $2. If you're a regular commuter, I myself take D2A2, and it's about hourly service. The grant budgets are each a little over around $2.5 million for a little over a year or two, depending on the grant, and that's in partnership with the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments. So for anybody who wants to use the service and know more about where it is, we have the D2A2 stops at the Blake Transit Center, downtown Ann Arbor, taking people to Grand Circus Park in downtown Detroit, or really halfway between downtown and Midtown. The DAX or DAX, Detroit Air Express, stops at Washington and State Street, right around the corner from the Rosa Parks Transit Center, across the street from the Book Cadillac Westin Hotel, and takes people directly to the DTW terminals, both McNamara and Evans. And we have a lot of thanks to our contractual partnership, Michigan Flyer, our marketing teams who helped bring this news to the community, both InVerve and AdWater. And these are both intended services for commuters and visitors. So we see a good mix of people using them. We are going to be reviewing these services through analysis this summer and some onboard surveys and community surveys. So it'll be an opportunity to look to how we want these to move in the future, growing or sustaining or otherwise. And then the last kind of nugget I'd like to touch on today is just our mobility wallet that's coming up. This is a pilot. We know that we have, for example, Easy Fare in the Ann Arbor area and DART through Token Transit in the Detroit and suburban areas. And so we're looking to how do we do in the future a regional system? And so we've really done some great work to investigate what could work best for our region. We're about to release an RFP for that through a $1 million state grant of the Michigan Mobility Wallet Challenge. There are 2 other projects that are concurrently operating in the state using existing platforms. And rather than just taking something out of the box, we really wanted to examine what's best for our communities before jumping into it. So our goals are to make it easier for people to travel, and with that, looking at not only visual validations, but potentially physical validators. And what I mean by that is not just showing a smartphone to a vehicle operator, but also potentially a physical card for people who either can't afford smartphones or may have a government phone, but not a lot of great access to connectivity. And so making sure that unbanked populations also have an easy way to get around. Regardless, that may be a phase 2, because this initial pilot scope may require additional funding for some of the hardware that would go with that. So we're looking to see what's feasible through some of these proposals. And long-term, our goal is to build towards a mobility as a service platform that can expand people's access for not only the payment piece, but also maybe fare capping. So if you ride a bunch of times and you aren't getting the same benefits as someone who can pay for multiple rides up front, that eventually that would kick in, or that average would kick in automatically, regardless of how you're paying. That we can have nonprofits that can subsidize transportation directly. And we're just starting small with 50 or so people focused around connections to work and in partnership with the United Way of Southeastern Michigan. So with that, I do see a couple of items in the chat.
Pravina, yeah.
Great. Thanks so much, Julia. It's nice to see you. I have a question about not a question. First, I wanted to just say I took the D2A2 service a couple of weeks ago, and I just want to say it was phenomenal. It was my first time. I did talk to a lot of riders to find out how many times they were taking it. There were people who were loading up their bikes and getting to Detroit. I had one person tell me that they were also using the flyer to get to the airport a lot, which was, they said that's their main mode of transportation. So huge proponents. I would love if, we could get some more of those voices to hear what their experiences are, to encourage more people to use these two services. My question is, I maybe touched on this and I missed it, but how long is the funding model for both services, and is there a plan or hope for implementation, or what is the timeline we're looking at and costs? Maybe not.
Yeah, definitely.
Funding.
I'm glad you had a good experience, first of all. That's been my experience so far as well. It's nice to hear when that's shared, and we've had more overwhelmingly positive responses so far. I will say that the D2A2 funding, the initial grant funding, is scheduled to go through the end of this calendar year. And then after that, we have some potential ongoing grant funding, but we want to evaluate how it's gone these first couple of years before committing to continuing anything. And really, that'll be up to our team and our board to determine, based on public feedback and general analysis of the route. But so far, so good. So hopefully we'll be able to keep it moving forward into 2025. And with the Detroit Air Express, which is funded separately from Air Ride, that is, DAX is funded for at least the first year. So that'll go through the beginning of 2025, with the possibility of extending up to an additional 6 to 9 months. So we again have some potential grant funding to sustain that. And then at some point, we'll need to look towards long-term sustainable funding.
Thanks, Julia. Yeah, and you just even saying, hearing feedback from riders. Once you book in the app, I'm not sure I would go back and make my feedback. So there may be a potential of people waiting at the stop or getting on the bus, and while they're waiting that 1 hour for that commute or whatever, 45 minutes, that they could have a QR code and answer a quick question, or like we just heard a little bit ago from Spin that they have incentives that maybe you get like a little discount or a little perk if you give us feedback. And that might help just encourage additional funding and support of the ride.
Yeah, we appreciate the suggestions. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? All right. Well, Julia, like you said, I think it's been a while since anyone from came in to us. So thank you very much for coming. It's always good feeling like it's a good feeling to be connected to the work that you guys do for the region as a whole. Lots of times we're kind of in a bubble here, but it's good to be reminded that we're part of the region. So thank you again for coming and talking to us.
Definitely an important part, and thank you for having me.
All right. Next up will be the U of M TRI update, but as mentioned previously, this item will be delayed to a future meeting, hopefully not too far in the future. So then next is the Quick Build survey review. Staff conducted a survey on impressions of the Quick Build projects that were deployed at various locations around the city. The survey is complete, and so Raymond will review those results.
Yeah, thank you, Brett. I noticed my computer still is a little choppy. I think it's trying to push an update. I see little exclamation points on the bottom toolbar of my screen, so maybe that's the cause. But if I freeze up, my apologies.
Sorry, Raymond, we're hearing you twice.
Oh, okay. Let's see how about now. Still the same problem.
Echo. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna mute my. I think everyone should mute themselves.
All right. Is that helping at all? No, still.
No.
Give me a moment and I will call in. I don't know what's happening with my computer today.
It's a cool reverb effect, but yeah, so very hard to hear.
All right. Am I coming through?
Sounds good. Thank you.
And no reverb. Okay. My apologies. What you may have not heard me say or heard an echo is I'm seeing there's an update on my computer, and I'm wondering if that is one of the complications of why my internet has been a little choppy. So my apologies. Thank you for your patience. So let me go ahead and share my screen for a moment. All right. So as many of you know, and we've reported in past meetings, we had a series of quick build deployments that were put throughout the community last year. And as one of the things we wanted to do was get impressions about how those quick build deployments were being kind of received by the community. So included in your packet is a report that gives a background on those quick build deployments, a little refresher about where they are and what they entailed. And then also gives results from the survey. So I'm going to quickly scroll through the report and then spend a little bit of time on the survey results. So the first few pages really speak to kind of the background. They talk about the different materials that were used, and then they give a sort of photo representation of each of the locations. So Packard and Maine, Maple and Miller, State and South University, Dexter and Maple, Glenn and Fuller, Ann and Fourth, and then a section along Ann between Fourth and Fifth. And then, again, I wanted to spend time going into the actual survey results itself. So what was kind of interesting about our deployment in this space is we kind of used some sort of tactical urbanism to get feedback as well. We put yard signs out at the locations so that people were standing there in front of it. They could scan a QR code and take the survey right on their phone. So again, here's a map that kind of shows all of the different locations. We asked respondents to kind of speak to which quick build they experienced and which they were speaking to, and kind of how they were experiencing the quick build as a vulnerable road user, so as a pedestrian or cyclist, or as a driver themselves. So there was information on the website as well. And, again, a lot of this, you can see sort of these yard signs and the website information that people were pointed to that kind of gave an explanation of what the projects were. So we ended up getting just under 250 responses were collected. And we, again, kind of asked what sort of experience most people had. The majority were on Liberty and Stadium in North Maple, but we had a pretty good representation across all of the different quick build locations. We asked what people were, what kind of trip they were doing when they were going through the location. But really what I wanted to kind of focus in on, who we heard from. So, people responded, again, how they experienced the quick build. So, they could kind of count multiple forms of transportation. So 94 of the respondents experienced as pedestrians, 88 as bicyclists, 4 as people in wheelchairs or using a mobility assisted device, 28 as bus riders, and 213 as drivers. So again, out of 243, the vast majority did experience them as drivers. So the first one I wanted to hone in on was, how did the quick build elements impact the following factors as you traveled? And so it's a series of a couple different questions. Did it improve your comfort of traveling? Did it affect your travel time? Did it affect the speed of others? And did it affect the behavior of others? So combining all the results, it's kind of a mixed bag, right? So in terms of comfort, it's kind of a wash. For some, it improved. For others, it made worse, 37 to 40% respectively. Travel time, it improved travel time for only a small percentage of people at 12%, made it worse for, the majority, or actually did not affect the majority of respondents, but made worse for, a large portion, 40%. Speed of others, it improved for 31%, did not affect for 42%, made worse for 27%. And then behavior is also kind of a mixed bag in terms of being split between it improved or made worse. But I think what's kind of interesting from these results is if you look at sort of the experience between vulnerable road users. So again, when I use that term, I'm speaking to pedestrians and cyclists and people in wheelchairs. You'll see that their impressions were very different than that of motorists. So In terms of comfort, it really did kind of suggest that their comfort was improved. When the behavior of others, they felt the quick builds did improve the behavior of others. Speed of others, it indicated that it did kind of slow cars down and improve the speed of others. It only had marginal, again, kind of a wash between travel time in terms of improving the experience versus making it worse, slightly favoring not making it worse, but really did not affect is the majority there in 52%. You compare that to kind of the driver's experience, comfort of traveling, 45% made worse, travel time, 47% made worse, affecting the speed of others, kind of a wash between, improved or made worse, and affecting the behavior of others. So, I think that the point here is that, in terms of, slowing down vehicles for, speed and travel time, and improving sort of the comfort of vulnerable road users, the quick build did sort of have the intended effect, at least based on the experience of those that responded to the survey. Then also in terms of just satisfaction, again, it's a sort of similar trend that you see in terms of satisfaction. Vulnerable road users saw the deployments of quick build much more favorably than that of drivers. As a matter of fact, it's almost kind of an inverse relationship. 33% of vulnerable road users suggested that they were very satisfied, whereas 34% of drivers responded they were very dissatisfied. So, it is just something for us to kind of take into consideration as we move forward with these, but it kind of also shows sort of the kind of dichotomy of trying to address some of these mobility challenges within the community. And I think one of the things that I wanted to mention going forward is we did compile all the comments. So, these were the main things I really wanted to highlight from the survey. Again, it's, 32 pages, so you can go further down and read all of the comments that were submitted. In terms of, do you have any suggested locations for quick build installations? And there were other questions about, just general impressions. And, people shared some pretty quite frank impressions about the deployments, and they are there for you to peruse. So we'll continue to sort of use these sort of instruments to gauge, impressions of these types of deployments, make modifications where we see that there's need for that based on the responses that we're getting, and just really, continuing to tweak the program. And this will just keep this in mind because the next item that I'm going to report to you will give an update on some quick builds that we're currently working on as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Raymond. Any questions, comments? Well, thanks for the survey. I think it got some good insight, that will help us moving forward in future years. So if there's no questions or comments, we'll move on to the next topic, which is Safe Streets for All. The city received $3.8 million from USDOT last year to advance quick build projects, speed management, and near miss analytics. So Raymond, if you have an update on that.
Okay, this is just a quick verbal update, but we're starting to move into some exciting territory. So, as Brett mentioned, we received $3.8 million in grant funding from USDOT. That's matched by an additional $950,000 in local dollars for a grand total of $4.75 million worth of projects. As Brett mentioned, it's going towards 3 separate initiatives. Quick builds, like what I just discussed. So expanding that program out. The whole idea is not waiting for major capital projects to be queued up, that we can go in and with paint and posts make some changes to hopefully address some safety concerns. Then the other is speed management program. You've heard some updates on this in the past, but for those of you who may have forgotten or are new to the commission, the speed management program is like a traffic calming toolkit for major roads and arterials. So again, think of speed humps, raised intersections on a major roadway. We want to, knowing that major roadways are one of our, our biggest concern for serious crashes, and we know that speed being one of the primary indicators of severity of crashes, what can we do to kind of drive speeds down? So obviously with the funding available, we won't be able to do everything everywhere, but we want to use this grant funding to do a couple of demonstration corridors and really tee that up. And then the last one is the near miss analytics. The idea here is we are familiar with what is happening in crashes that are formally reported through UD10 crash reports that are filled out by law enforcement agencies. But what about close calls or near misses? And so we want to tap into some of our existing detection, which is camera-based, run that through some post-processing to be able to analyze where there might be other areas of concern that might be going underreported. So the update in this space with that background is that we have executed a contract with a consultant to help us procure and do the reporting on the near miss analytics. AECOM is going to be helping us with that work. So that's very exciting. We're starting to really work up on that. We would have to procure services from a third-party vendor in this space, and so AECOM understands the space a little bit better than staff does, and they're going to help us make sure that we're being very thoughtful about all the different considerations that will go into this. The other one was just due yesterday. We had an RFP for a grant administrator for the Quick Build and Speed Management Program. So this is an extension of staff for someone to come in and really help us run the program soup to nuts. So help us with the data analysis to identify which corridors would be best suited for speed management, help us identify where we can put those quick builds in, make it be very data-driven so that the countermeasures that we put in will address the negative behaviors that we're seeing in the crash patterns and focus in on the areas of highest concern. So we are still analyzing those RFPs, but that contract will go before council probably in about 6 weeks' time or so, so end of June or early July. Hopefully we'll have that teed up, and then the work will begin in earnest. So they're just those updates that I wanted to provide because there's been some recent movements. I know for a long time we kept saying like we're very close to executing the grant. That took a little longer than we were expecting. It took over a year to do that. We were awarded in January of 2023, and I think it was late January of 2024 when that grant got executed. But now that that's finally all the ink is dried on it, we can start to move these projects forward. So we're very excited to do that. So with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions you might have. Again, a lot more updates will be forthcoming, but this is kind of one of the first big hurdles for us to kind of get this work going. And I wanted to share that news with you all.
That's all exciting news. Any questions or comments from anyone on those three initiatives? All right, then you're up again. Staff report and updates. Oh, sorry, Peter. Hey, you're still muted, Peter.
Am I working off a different agenda than everyone else? Feel like I show a different agenda item here. We've got Regional Transportation Authority, then it says crash response protocol, then safe streets for all. Did I miss something?
No, you're right. Let's see. Okay, yeah, that's
I don't know. Chris, would that accidentally carry forward from last month?
Yeah, under the crash response protocol, I'll note the attachment was the quick build final report.
Okay.
So I think that was just the agenda heading.
Just a typo.
Updated. It should be the quick build survey review.
Okay. I mean,
sorry about that.
I saw it on there, and it was meant for a follow-up later on, but maybe not in this meeting. So,
Brett, do we need a motion to amend the agenda given that header, or I don't know what's the mechanics here?
Well, yeah. I guess we could move to the agenda heading from crash response protocol to quick build survey review.
I move.
Yeah, seconded by Lisa. All those in favor say yes or raise your hand. Okay, I'm not sure. Yep. All those opposed say no or raise your hand. Okay, agenda has been modified to show that 6C should be quick build survey review instead of crash response call, which is what happened in
my
reality.
apologies for that oversight. That was my apologies for that oversight.
No problem. And I was working from a different modified agenda, so I didn't notice that as we were going. All right. So back to staff report and updates. Raymond?
All right. So per our usual, I'll just go through changes from last month to this month on projects. So we always kind of carry forward the street resurfacing projects and sidewalk gaps. But moving forward under Miller Avenue, bids just came in yesterday. So those are still under review. We don't know yet, what the recommendation is yet. We're still evaluating those. But just wanted to let you know that that project is kind of moving forward. And, if there's deemed to be an acceptable bid, we'll bring that to council for their consideration. Let's see, 7th and Greenview, construction is underway on 7th and the segment of Greenview north of Zio Church, and construction is expected to continue into November. Pauline water main and resurfacing, there was some on-site public engagement last weekend, which will be repeated this weekend at 9 a.m. Those are Saturdays. So for anybody interested in that project, you can go out there. There is, discussion of how to incorporate an all ages and abilities bike facility, because that is identified in the plan. So there's been a lot of discussion around that topic. The state trunk line jurisdictional transfer analysis, you may recall we presented this back to you in February. We weren't able to get it in front of council in short order because of just budget preparations and things like that. But we have tentatively scheduled that for June 10th. They've been shared the report. You all have seen the report as well. So it is out there for the public's viewing. But they haven't had the same presentation that you've had. So that will happen in June. Micromobility we discussed tonight. Office of Sustainability and Innovations continues to build out the electric vehicle charging infrastructure, including 13 dual port level 2 chargers at the Ann Arbor Senior Center, Huron Hills Golf Course, Leslie Park Golf Course, Fuller Park, and Veterans Memorial Park. You just heard the Safe Streets for All update, so I don't need to tell you about that. Bike parking, you heard me touch on a little bit of this earlier, but to expand on what I said, the DDA is also looking at kind of updating their downtown bike parking strategy. So they have released an RFP for a consultant to help with that strategy, and the updated inventory for downtown bike parking facilities is part of that strategy, and we are in coordination with them on that. Carbon reduction program grants. So, again, one of the big projects that we've been working with DTE and others, is to take all of the DTE streetlights and convert them to LED for energy efficiency's sake, which is a identified carbon reduction strategy in the 820 plan. So we did get some grant funding from SEMCOG. We're moving that forward. We're currently in negotiations with DTE on what that could look like. And we hope to bring something to council in June for their consideration. And then lastly, we are continuing to, work through different departments and such to get everybody up to speed on the Vision Zero plan. So again, that it's just, everybody at the city is in lockstep on this. So we're holding departmental specific meetings with streets and signs and signals. So those are coming up. And then today was Bike to Wherever Day. And there were 20 stations that you could visit for goodies and to show support. So we want to thank the sponsors, especially Walk Bike Washtenaw, which took the lead on the event this year. And we were happy partners in that initiative. So again, thank you to everybody who participated, who stopped by stations, and to the station hosts as well. And with that, I'm finished, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Questions? All right. Now, liaison reports. Any commissioners who specifically serve as a liaison to another body or organization are invited to provide brief reports or updates. Do we have any tonight? Yep, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a real quick note. We're very happy the ride is happy to begin delivering the services that voters voted for in the 2022 millage. We rolled out the Ypsilanti Ann Arbor Express bus, Route 104, started operating a week or so back. Ridership's already up to about 300 a day, so growing pretty quickly. We're happy about that. Cuts travel time between the two communities by about a third, so we're pretty happy with that. That's the only report to make at this time.
You. Anyone else? All right, next up, commission member communications. All commissioners are invited to provide reports or updates. Yes, Raymond.
Yes, so I did want to.
Oh my goodness. Oh. There we go. Sorry, I unmuted the wrong thing. I did want to make an announcement. I have submitted my resignation to the City of Ann Arbor, and this will be my last Transportation Commission meeting. I do want to take this opportunity to thank the commission members for their dedication to transportation and transportation safety. It truly is a remarkable group of dedicated residents, and I thank you for your time. It really is. I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate the direction you provide to not only us, but the policymakers at the city, and your work is very important. So thank you for the opportunity and the honor to have served you for the past 6 years. The decision was difficult. There were a lot of things I had to consider. But one of the things that made it a little bit easier is that I get to continue to do progressive transportation projects within the community and within the county because I am going over to the ride to work and help them on capital projects. So it's a very exciting opportunity. I like to think that while, like, for example, Nick, my boss, who I hate to leave behind, while he might be, losing a coworker, he's gaining a friend and a partner at a different agency. And so hopefully you can think of it the same way, that you have a friend at the ride. I'm sure you have plenty of friends at the ride already, but you have another one. So obviously the transition will take some time, and I do ask for your patience during that transition. There obviously some things we need to do in terms of how we transition roles and responsibilities related to this commission to make sure that there aren't mistakes made, like we posting wrong agendas, and that's my fault. So, hey, there might be some operational improvements there. So there's room for improvement, and hopefully you'll be the benefactor of that. So anyway, I did want to let you know all of that. Again, I thank you all for your dedication to this commission, dedication to the city, and dedication to transportation safety in general. And again, thank you for the opportunity to serve you.
Raymond, yeah, you've been a superstar this whole the existence of the commission, and so much of what has been achieved in this is so you've provided not just guide, expertise, ideas, but especially the last year or two, the amount of execution and uh, and seeing all of these initiatives and the Vision Zero plan moving forward is just it's so much of it is attributed directly to you. So very proud of you. Should be very proud of what you've done and accomplished. And I didn't know you were going to AAATA. I think that's awesome. I'm glad that we'll still get to see you around in Arbor. And Matt, I'm very jealous. You guys are very lucky. But thanks again, Raymond. I'm glad that we'll still hopefully get to see you around though. And congratulations. Right. Yes, Wanwu.
Thank you. Tough to kind of follow that one up, Raymond. So best of luck on the new endeavors, and glad we'll still see you around town. So wanted to give a really quick update on the Planning Commission side of things. We did update our work plan for 2024 and 2025. Again, it seems very weird to be talking about this after getting that news, so I'm sorry. Wish I would have went before, Raymond. Two things that I wanted to bring to transportation's awareness is TC1 Washtenaw corridor is in process right now at council's request. So we do expect that to come through Planning Commission around June, July-ish. I think June is kind of the time frame for looking at Washtenaw for TC1. The transportation review criteria that is updating our code to include not just kind of like vehicular traffic analysis, but multimodal transit analysis. And so that is intended to create UDs. It's updating the Unified Development Code to kind of looking at the holistic impact of development on transportation. We are also scheduled to continue looking at drive-throughs. The other one that I think is going to really be of interest is as we go through the comprehensive plan, the comp plan is slated to be, we're still well underway. We're anticipating, completion in 25. One of the items that's going to be implemented into the Unified Development Code is going to be parking maximum. So as you may be aware, we eliminated parking minimums, so no developments require any parking. Just what they actually propose, but that we are going to be looking at capping or looking to revise the parking maximums moving forward. So other things that we have are post-comp plan. Again, so this will be in 25, looking into 2026. Will be a corridor design standards, pedestrian connectivity between and among private developments, climate resiliency. But again, I think the parking maximums, corridor design standards, and pedestrian connectivity are ones primarily of concern for this particular body. Again, looking at 25, 26 for those items, but of more kind of on the current horizon is going to be Washtenaw corridor, TC1, the transportation review criteria. I think that's already at council if it hasn't already been approved. It already went through first reading May 6th, and it'll probably come back in June's meeting for final adoption. So those are the updates from the Planning Commission side of things. So, but again, Raymond, we're gonna miss you. Sorry, I'm kind of like, oh shit. Oh, excuse my language. I was
multimodal transportation impact analysis passed at last city council, so that is code now.
Thank you. Oh, well, yep. Sorry, my notes at second reading. It was the bylaws chapter that was on May 6th. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that correction. So material correction, the transportation review criteria is now part of the Unified Development Code and should be adopted here with the updated version here in the coming weeks. So with that, we'll miss you very much, Raymond, but try to come visit you and Matt sometime. So thank you for all of your service. Thank you.
Thanks again. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to call for agenda items. Raymond, if you would review the existing work plan and some previously requested agenda items.
Yeah, so we will follow up with Dr. Jim Sayer to see if he is able to join us in June for his tree updates. I don't know if the traffic calming petitions, some of those are nearing their final stages. So some of those are ready. They might come back. We did promise you a winter maintenance update. So we are waiting to see what happens with the budget. I think I mentioned this last time. So the budget is going to City Council next week. So we might have some updates about really what the plan is going forward, as also looking back. And then the annual review of bylaws is out there as well. That is an annual thing that we do. So those are the items we're tracking. And we also haven't lost sight of the crash response protocol as well. It's something that we're tracking and trying to come up with some strategies on.
All right. As always, please email any other agenda topic ideas to myself, Megan, Raymond, or anyone else. Christopher, of course. All right. Well,
Yeah, one question about agenda. Will the Miller improvements come back to this body? Like, I think we had discussion on the preliminary, design or ideas, but we didn't actually vote on anything. And then I think we heard in this meeting that it's out for bid, but yeah, so is Miller going to come back at all with like a final design or plan? Or did I miss something?
I think we can give you an update on it. I don't think we're anticipating seeking additional recommendations from this body on it.
Okay.
That really but we're happy to give you an update on that if you'd like.
I'll maybe take back that request. I'm sure that's something that's findable via the website, right?
Well, it would come through at a minimum in the monthly staff report and updates.
Okay.
I'm sure there'd be a paragraph or two devoted to the.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks.
It's the person that puts together those updates for the capital project. I'll try to put in a little bit more detail on that for the next update.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. With that, the next meeting will be held Wednesday. Oh, wait. Let's see. This says it's going to be June something, isn't it? Sorry, I need to look at what the third Wednesday in June is, and that is that's June 19th. I think it's June 19th.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, June 19th, 2024 at 7 p.m. And that will also be a virtual meeting. And yes, Peter.
I guess June 19th is not a city holiday?
The Juneteenth holiday, I believe, is on Monday.
Okay.
It's observed. No, wait.
I think we did move
Oh,
it.
it is on Wednesday.
June 6th. I remember having this conversation and we ended up moving it to the 6th of June.
The next Transportation Commission meeting is going to be June 6th.
I believe so.
Yeah, that's what I have on my calendar.
Okay. So the first Thursday in June. Okay. All right. I forgot about that. All right. So let me make that clear. The next meeting will be held June 6th, 2024. I guess I could look at the Legistar website. The Legistar website has also scheduled for June 6th. Okay. So that is different than normal. All right. That will also be a virtual meeting. Thank you for that. All right, so if there are no objections, we will adjourn our May 15th, 2024 meeting. Any objections? All right, none, seeing none. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Good night.
Right.